Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for Saturday, September the 7th, 2024. Also, if you like these detailed tropical weather updates, please subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video with your family and friends on social media. So, taking a look at the latest GOES 16 true color visible satellite imagery over the Atlantic Basin for this afternoon. And as we can see here, there are three areas to watch out there in the Atlantic Basin. We have an area just to the south of the Cabo Verde Islands that has a low chance of tropical development. We also have another one to its west that has now a 40% chance, a medium chance from the NHC of tropical development. We won't be discussing that one in today's video because we have an area that is pretty concerning right now over the western half of the Gulf of Mexico that has now a 70% chance of tropical development. So we're going to spend the entire video talking about this disturbance, and if there is time, we will look at this disturbance down here in the central main development region, only if there's time though. So now when we take a closer zoomed in view here over the Gulf of Mexico for this afternoon, we can see that there is a lot going on with this disturbance right now in the Bay of Campeche. We have an area of disturbed weather to the north that was previously dubbed Invest 90L. Now it's not an Invest anymore, and instead we have now Invest 91L down here just coming off of the Yucatan Peninsula. And what we're seeing here, this disturbance is entangled within a decaying cold frontal boundary. We have a lot of stretched out vorticity throughout this portion of the Gulf. So we have an area lobe, a northern lobe of vorticity that is not really closed. It's not even closed at all. And we also have a southern lobe of vorticity down here. So what we have here, we have alternating wind currents going this way. We have another area of alternating wind currents coming in out of the north. So what we're seeing here is a lot of vorticity within this boundary, this baroclinic boundary. And what will end up happening that the southern end of this lobe will end up consolidating and moving close to Mexico and then curving up and possibly hitting portions of Texas or Louisiana. There are some differences in the modeling on this, but one thing's for sure is that we are likely to now see a tropical depression or tropical storm develop in the next couple of days, perhaps, or even in the next 2 to 4 days as this generally consolidates. Now, the reason why the northern end of the vorticity maxima is not going to be the focal point of development is because when we look at the low-level water vapor imagery, we have all this orange. This indicates drier air in the low levels of the atmosphere. It's not just that. If we take a look at the upper levels of the atmosphere, we could also see some yellow impinging on the system. So there is quite a bit of deep layer drier air over Texas that is not allowing the deep convection here to wrap all the way around. On top of that, we have westerly flow impinging on the system too. So that's why we are not seeing a very well-defined system up here, but instead down here, we have that invest that we were talking about in the Bay of Campeche. We have easterly flow, very light easterly flow, and this is more an optimal position for the system to actually thrive off of. Now, with that being said, here's a look at the latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. And as we can see here, there is that disturbance over the western Gulf of Mexico that has a high chance of tropical development. This is, again, Invest 91L. An area of low pressure has formed over the Bay of Campeche and is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. The system is forecasted to drift slowly northward for a couple of days while it interacts with a frontal boundary. Environmental conditions are forecasted to become conducive for development, and a tropical depression is likely to form during the early or middle part of next week, while the system moves generally northward near or along the Mexican and Texas Gulf coastline. Interests along the western Gulf of Mexico need to really monitor the progress of this system, as heavy rainfall, strong winds, and maybe some flooding are also anticipated. There is a 70% chance for this to develop. But of course, we have two other areas to briefly look over. The one in the central main development region has a medium chance that has been upgraded from just 10% yesterday morning. Now it's up to 40% this afternoon. And then we also have a newly developed area that the NHC is watching that has a 20% chance. So the Atlantic remains somewhat busy, not hyperly busy, but of course we have 3 areas to watch right now, which is not meaning that the Atlantic is dead at the moment. So now, since we looked at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook, it is very important to look at our numerical global computer models, because this is going to tell us, will this system become a tropical depression or a tropical storm off the Texas coast or even off the Louisiana coast in the Gulf of Mexico. So anyone that is watching this video, you really need to be paying close attention to this part of the video, because I'm going to run through 5 different global computer models for you all. That's my job, because I want to be detailed and I want to be honest and accurate with my weather information. All right, so let's go forward into this. This is the European Artificial Intelligence Forecasting System. This is the AI-based European model. So as we go forward in time, we can see by Sunday night, we have a consolidated area of low pressure that does try to develop over the southern portion of the Bay of Campeche here in the Gulf of Mexico. And take note, these northerly winds are going to be pretty strong. Winds anywhere between 30 to 40 miles an hour. So that's pretty robust for this system. Even so, it's not really a tropical depression or storm. But once this gets better consolidated and it goes further north in the next, say, 3 days, so this would be again for Monday night into Tuesday morning for September the 9th and the 10th, we do have winds here that are pretty strong. And then apparently this model has been very consistently showing that an area potential for landfall could be in the southern Louisiana coast, such as New Orleans, Cameron, as well as other areas along this area. So we can see winds here anywhere between 30 to 40 miles an hour. So that is tropical depression force, even getting close to tropical storm force. And this has been a remarkable, consistent model. If we go just back and look at the last 4 runs, we can see the 12Z run yesterday, the 18Z run yesterday, the 0Z run last night, and now the 06Z run. This is delayed. This is not the 12Z run yet. This takes a little bit of time to come out. We can see this has been very consistent between the 12Z run and the 06Z run. So the last 4 runs here showing a tropical depression or storm in the northwestern Gulf of Mexico off the Texas and Louisiana coast. But now our European model, which has been too conservative, is also now jumping onto the pike here that this system does become our next tropical depression or storm. If we go forward in time, this is not the artificial intelligence-based Euro. This is a deterministic numerical model, which uses numbers, 1s and 0s, to get us an image and to actually predict on what the atmosphere will do. So when we go into Sunday afternoon here, we can see strong winds. And here's that vorticity, this stretched out area, what we call vorticity stretching, or the spin that is elongated, it's stretched, it's not singular, it's not closed, it's not well defined here. And so that's why this is not a tropical depression or storm. Even so, we have really intense winds on the western side, perhaps even nearing 40 miles an hour. So that is pretty significant. And then watch what happens on the Euro in the next, say, 60 hours. This would be for Monday night into early Tuesday morning for September the 9th and the 10th. We have a developing system, and then eventually it does try to develop towards the end of, or basically in the next 3 days. So this would be Tuesday night and a Wednesday, but winds of only about 30 miles an hour. And this would probably be a tropical depression at this moment. But interestingly, look what happens. It moves back over the waters off the Texas coast, and it does develop into a tropical storm here, and perhaps even a little bit of a stronger one here, specifically maybe 40 to 45 miles an hour on the European model. But this has not been consistent, has been the least consistent one. If we look at the 0Z from last night, we barely had anything there. When we look at the 12Z run, barely anything. So this is still a chance that this does not develop anything into a tropical storm or even a depression, because the Euro, it's only 1 run, and we have to wait for consistency on that. but the GFS has been different otherwise. So looking at this model going forward in time, this is showing a much more strong ribbon of wind. This is basically over the next 24 hours, we'll back it up right about there, the next 24 to 25 hours, indicating a very strong, decent fetch of wind here of 45 to 55 miles an hour on the southwestern side and the western side of the circulation. Very intense. And as we go forward, over the next 2 to 3 days, you can see how the system all evolves. So this does develop in a rapid fashion in such a way that we do get a tropical storm in about 3 to 4 days. And then maybe on this model, very aggressive GFS model here, indicating maybe a very strong tropical storm, if not on this particular run. Now, I'm not trying to hype cast. I'm not trying to cause a lot of panic or fear here, but this model does show this becoming a hurricane off the Louisiana and Texas coast, and this is no fantasy model. This is under 5 days out. To be specific, if this becomes a hurricane, it could do so in even about 4.5 days over the northwestern Gulf of Mexico, and this has been trending stronger on the last runs. You can see it here on the 18Z run yesterday, barely anything, and then the 0Z run showing a tropical storm, and then maybe a strong tropical storm on the 06Z that run, and then now recently we may have a hurricane coming for the Texas and Louisiana coast. Not saying this will become a hurricane, but the GFS is pretty aggressive now on this, saying that, oh, this might become our next tropical storm or next hurricane. The Canadian model also indicates something a little similar, but not as aggressive. We can see that system generally moving northward and then eventually impacting the Texas coast near, say, Houston, Texas. If you're in Corpus Christi, we're looking at winds here anywhere between 45 to 55 miles an hour and might even get close to even 50 miles an hour over southwestern Louisiana and even near Houston, right where Beryl made landfall pretty much. So not a good situation for Houston, Texas with this situation. But guess what? It's not just that. The Icon model also pretty aggressive as well. Not as aggressive as it was last night, but still showing us a tropical storm eventually on approach to perhaps Louisiana and even in Texas. So my point being here is that if we go and look at the GFS model, it does show a landfall in this general area where the artificial intelligence model shows the Canadian a little further to the west and the Icon right now pretty much in the same area. So we really have to watch. If you're on Louisiana or Texas, boy, I'm telling you right now, this could strengthen pretty quickly. I'm not saying that just to get clicks and views. I'm saying that because our water temperatures here in the Gulf are very warm, very moist atmosphere, not a whole lot of shear to work with here. And so this system has some potential to intensify into a tropical storm at the very least, possibly a low-grade hurricane with winds of 75 miles an hour. So when we take a look at our radar forecast briefly here from WSV3 software, let's go forward in time and see what this could bring. So this is again for Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening over the Gulf of Mexico. You can see the radar reflectivities here indicating lots of heavy rainfall and some gusty winds. And I have a 3-plot system here so you can really see this in detail as we go all the way into, say, Monday and Tuesday here. Look at all that heavy rainfall right along the Mexico coast. And when we zoom in a little bit more, you can see how heavy that rain is. And then going forward, you can see that the system really brings a lot of rainfall to Houston, Lake Jackson. If you're in Lafayette, New Orleans, this could be a really big system. And look at this over Orange, as well as Beaumont in Texas. Lots of heavy rainfall. Look at those winds. Really strong winds potentially here by the middle of next week. Lake Charles could get really inundated here with a lot of rainfall and some gusty winds. And then after that goes on through, this will weaken eventually. Now, when we look at our spaghetti plot from tropicaltidbits.com, again, this could shift further west. This could shift further east. But all these red tracks right here indicate pressures of 980 millibars. So that is a low-grade hurricane on some of these tracks here in the next, say, 5 to 6 days. Again, this would spend up to 4.5 to maybe 5 days over the Gulf of Mexico. That's more than plenty of time for this to really strengthen in a hurry. So again, anyone living in Texas and Louisiana really needs to be monitoring the progress of this system, as significant flooding, strong winds, and some storm surge and some surf are also anticipated. So with that being said, here's a look at our spaghetti plot on our intensity forecast on this disturbance. And right now, my intensity forecast is pretty much down the middle of the guidance here, indicating that this will become a tropical storm in about as early as about 4 days. 4 days, possibly a tropical storm, and then eventually maybe a high-end tropical storm in about 5 to 6 days. And it's noteworthy here that all of the models here pretty much do have this intensifying all the way up for the next 7 days. So does this become something more significant, or does this stay on the lower end? We don't know for a fact, but what we do know is that this could earn its name Francine, would be our letter F storm, and would be our 6th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. Now that we described on what the winds and where the track and intensity could go with this system, what about the environmental forecast on Invest 91L? That's very important for a lot of you that are watching this. This is a deep look at the wind shear, vertical wind shear throughout the vertical column of the atmosphere. So we're looking at from about 5,000 feet all the way up to about 34,000 feet. And so these red areas indicate lots of wind shear. Greener and bluer colors indicate lighter wind shear. So as we go forward here on our disturbance, you can see that the wind shear here is going to remain very light. Look at this, anticyclonic shear vectors here, all outflow here. There's no shear on this system at all. In fact, some of the models indicate that shear will be less than 4 or 5 knots over the western Gulf of Mexico over the next 4 to 5 days, which again, with very light shear, not much dry air impinging on the system, this could become a really big problem for Texas and Louisiana. And you can see here, not much shear over the system. But it's not until we get basically into day 5 when the shear might pick up last minute. But with this trough coming in, this might allow a lot of baroclinic forcing, and the system might actually deepen all the way up until landfall in Texas and Louisiana, perhaps. This is easily seen on our deep layer moisture plot as well. So turquoise and green colors indicate lots of moisture. Browner colors indicate lots of dry air in the atmosphere. Remember what we talked about on the water vapor imagery? Lots of dry air over Texas right now. And that's why that disturbance, the northern lobe of this, may not do much at all. And instead, our southern lobe could do something more productive. So as we zoom in here, if I'm able to, we can see there's our system, 998 millibars on the corner of your screen. And then as this gets up further north, it really strengthens. Look at this. It goes from 988, 984, 978, 979. And due to maybe some shear, that's why it's not able to strengthen very much. But that could be an understatement. We will really have to wait and see on how this progresses. Because if we look at the previous GFS model runs, it really has trended stronger, significantly in fact. 1,005 millibars on yesterday's 18Z model run. Last night's 0Z 995, then 06Z run from overnight last night 982, and now our most recent 12Z run showing a 979 millibar system. So this has uptrended notably in the last 4 to 5 model runs from the GFS. And it really won't matter exactly where the center passes over, because look at all of this green here. That's a lot of moisture, and that means a lot of rainfall and flood potential. So with that being said, here's a look at your total precipitation forecast over the next 7 days from the European Ensemble forecast. All 51 members that are included with this, showing us how much rainfall on average that the ensemble's picking up on. And right now, over southeastern Texas, you could see 2 to 5 inches of rainfall. Now, again, depending on exactly where that center goes, could see much more significant rainfall. In fact, some of the members here picking up even a foot of rainfall over Houston, Texas, as well as southern Louisiana, where you might see as much as 3 to 5 inches of rainfall on the ensemble forecast, even 2 inches up here over Arkansas, Mississippi as well. So it's not just along the Gulf Coast, a lot of rainfall also spreading onshore too. Now from the Weather Prediction Center, WPC also on board with this. Look at how much rainfall that Houston, Texas could get up to 8 inches of rainfall. Some areas like Mobile, Alabama, because again, that moisture being strung out, you might see a foot of rainfall coming your way. And also for southern Louisiana, you might see as much as 5 to 7 inches of rainfall with this. So it's not just about the wind and the storm surge and the surf that you might be contending with, but it is also going to be the amounts or the copious amounts of rainfall and moisture that you will be seeing with this. And speaking of surf, really quickly, I wanted to show you all this, looking at our significant wave height forecast according to the latest European model, showing us here that there could be some surf anywhere between 10 to 15 feet with this, with maximum individual wave heights here approaching 25 feet. So again, storm surge, beach erosion, some coastal flooding as well with this is certainly a possibility. And when we look at our Wave Watch 3 from the GFS model, showing something very similar, unfortunately. And when we look at our wave heights here, you can see clearly maybe 25 to 30 feet here with maximum individual wave heights possibly approaching 30 to 40 feet. So yeah, definitely be very weary if you're going to the beaches. I hope no one is, because the surf is going to be pretty insane. But to review with what we talked about briefly, again, we are keeping an eye on Invest 91L down here in the Bay of Campeche. This is still a threat to the Mexico coast. So again, I'm going to highlight that. So if you're along Mexico, if you're along the Texas coast, and also across Louisiana, you definitely need to be watching this system. Like I said, it may not seem like, oh, it's not going to hit Louisiana, David. I promise it's not going to hit Louisiana or Texas. You watch, it's going to hit Mexico. We do not know that for a fact, but there's a lot of consistency over this portion of the Gulf from right about here all the way to about here. This whole window here has the potential of seeing a formidable tropical storm or hurricane in the next 5 to 7 days. And you all in this area need to really be watching the progress of this system. I can only do my best at making sure you all are aware of this system. You all are getting prepared just in case if you may have to evacuate due to a flooded prone area that you may thrive in. My job here is to make sure you all are up to date with accurate and honest weather information on these tropical systems. But anyways, if you did enjoy today's detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion on Invest 91L with a lot of detail, please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon to get latest notifications here on the YouTube channel, as I will be uploading and doing live streaming updates on this disturbance as long as it remains a threat. And also leave a comment in the section below. Sharing this, folks, is very important though. Please, please share this. The more shares we can get, the more people that can get notified and also get prepared for what this system may have with us. But otherwise, I will be back with you more tomorrow on this tropical disturbance. Maybe a live stream might be considered tonight though. We'll see about that.